All right, so we are back here at the Zac Clark Show, and for those of you that know me, you know hopefully that I believe one of the key pillars to my recovery and anyone's recovery is community, and I am thrilled to have one of the best to ever do it with us today, Scott Strode, who is the founder and executive director of the Phoenix. If you don't know about the Phoenix, they are a free national sober active community. They're approaching 1 million members. I think they're just under 900,000. They've done nearly 90,000 events. That's a ton of events and a ton of lives they've impacted. And Scott's here today to kind of share his story and how he has been such a trailblazer, combining really movement, which as a runner I appreciate, as a way to find a healthier way of living. Scott, what is up?
Hey, thanks for having me. It's
Thanks,
good to be here with you guys.
We were just discussing Scott's train ride here where he got an omelet and they forgot the bacon. So we will make sure that the Amtrak or Acela has the bacon next time.
And I just want you to know, Zach, that Scott's a Beantown guy, but he's a big Birds fan.
Are you?
Grew up
Yeah.
in PA.
Yeah,
Go
I grew
Birds.
up outside of Philly, and so always been an Eagles fan.
Lancaster.
Yeah, lived in Denver, and then also lived in Boston, and still.
Were you there? Where'd you watch the game?
I just at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never gone to see a game. Which
Oh,
I'd like
dude, you
to
got to
someday.
come.
Yeah,
We got
I'd
season
love
tickets.
to.
You got to come. You got to come.
You've never seen a game?
No, I've just.
Wow.
And with little kids, I don't even get to watch them much at home. When I sit down to, I usually end up taking a nap because I'm tired because they keep us busy. So
Yeah, amazing. There's a lot to dig in here. There's obviously your personal story, and we certainly want to highlight the work that's being done at the Phoenix because I've personally been to events. I know a couple folks at work over there, and I always get inspired when we have our Monday night runs and I see kind of the Phoenix clan. They'll kind of latch on sometimes and come, and it's beautiful. And the thing that I love about the Phoenix, and maybe you can start here, is you have this. There's a lot of barriers to entry, right? Whether it be treatment or therapy, and you remove a lot of those because it's free. And what you say is, if you have 48 hours sober, you can come to any of our events. And so I'd like to know, like, why'd you make it that way? Why'd you decide to make it so accessible?
yeah, I think it was sort of an instinct we had early on, like just remembering for myself when I got sober, how I felt like I was carving my sobriety out of the wilderness by myself and felt super alone in early recovery. And I just, remembering that, wanted to make it accessible to everybody. But there's like one other element that's key is our ethos, which is essentially we're here to lift each other up, not pull each other down. And so, with the 48 hours of sobriety and the ethos, like that's all you need to come to Phoenix. And what we find is people can dip their toe in, they can try it out. Maybe they're still using the next day or they're drinking the next day, but we want them back again. So if they get 48 hours again, come back to Phoenix. And all of a sudden you start to piece together, a couple days a week, then 4 days a week. And, we hope that they can step into recovery then and come to Phoenix all the time.
Yeah.
But if they don't, there's no judgment. We love them, we miss them, we want them back. And I think taking away that shame around whether you're drinking or not drinking or relapse or struggling or it's sticking or it's not sticking, allows people to step into it in a different way. And we also allow allies and supporters to come, but they also have to be 48 hours sober. And the beauty of that is that they're going through the addiction with the people they love. Why not go through recovery with them too?
Yeah.
So they come to Phoenix as well. Many of them end up becoming our volunteers.
That's incredible.
So,
And volunteers run these activities, right? These are all people who've chosen to participate and organize.
yeah, so in the early days of Phoenix, we thought it would be sort of staffed in every community. And we started to realize that, we would need like 2,000 employees just to run Phoenix in California, So we had to sort of just innovate and think about how we can do it, And then meanwhile, we were getting all these emails and social media messages from people saying, my loved one's dying. Can Phoenix come here? I think it could help them. And so we thought, why not empower that person to be the person that starts Phoenix? And so now anybody who's touched by substance use can be the person who starts Phoenix in their community.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. I mean, and it's easy to read those numbers at the beginning and kind of gloss over them, but nearly, 1 million members is it's just such an amazing number. And we all know, as a fellow kind of founder and CEO, and, I have great empathy for the work you do. It started with your story, man. Like, it started with one, and growing up as a kid in Lancaster, can you kind of dig into what your upbringing looked like and how you got to this, from where you were and to where you are today? Because it didn't just happen overnight.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, for me, like the foundation of the pain that I think I was numbing with drugs and alcohol really started in those formative years. My father had untreated mental health struggles. My stepfather had untreated alcoholism. And so as a kid, I had to sort of read cues from people to sort of figure out who I needed to be that day to be loved. So as a little kid, that's a tough world to grow up in. And whether it was depression or mania for my dad, or anger for my stepdad around something, or pushing us to be perfect in whatever way, it damaged my self-esteem a lot. And so when I poured drugs and alcohol on it for the first time, it felt great.
Do you remember your first use? Do you remember?
Yeah. My cousins, all the people I respected at that point, like hung out around a keg of beer or a liquor closet because the cabinet was too small. 52.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I wanted to be with those guys and hang out with them. So one day we were water skiing on the Chesapeake and I said, "Hey, can I have a beer?" I was 11. And they're like, "Yeah, but you got to drink the whole thing." It was like a 16-ounce Old Milwaukee, and it was warm. And it was like I got through like a quarter of it, and one of my cousins dumped it out. And but when I told my buddies I had a beer, they were blown away. They're like, "What was it like? Oh my gosh!" And all of a sudden, I got this attention and sort of admiration from people for being able to tell that story. And I said, "I know where there's a whole fridge full of them in our garage. Why don't I just steal a 12-pack of them and we meet behind my house?" And that's what started it.
Was this when you were with can you just paint, because you had a very interesting childhood, between your how you lived with your father versus your mother. Can you just sort of paint that picture of what it was like moving back and forth and the experience there?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sharing some stuff not to like put anything on my parents, because obviously I was the one that was picking up and drinking and using, but I think you can't really talk about addiction in a lot of circumstances without talking about trauma or pain. And for me, that trauma and pain came from those self-esteem wounds. And for my mom, she was incredibly accomplished. She ended up becoming friends with 3 different presidents. She ran a huge U.S. company, ended up selling that company, and became a U.S. ambassador.
Wow.
She was just incredibly accomplished. But we would go from a world where we'd stay at the Four Seasons with her, and when we were with my dad, we would be in a house where he tore out one wall in a manic episode and never put it back because he was going to build an addition, but never did. So he stapled plastic over it. So we lived in a 3-walled house with him, that didn't have indoor plumbing, and had a space heater just in the one bedroom we all slept in. And so to go back and forth between those 2 worlds, it just sort of compounded that feeling I had, because in one place I felt like I was phony and didn't belong in that place because it was this like elevated society. And then when I was with my dad, I didn't really know who to be loved. So it was a dynamic childhood.
Wow. And when you had that first drink, was that with your dad or when you were staying with your mom?
It was with my step family. So when my mom remarried, there was a lot of like alcohol culture in that family. And so I just wanted to be in that culture.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what we get calls all the time here from parents, and they don't understand that, right? Like a lot of us start drinking and drugging because it's just the thing that we feel like at that moment is the thing that we're supposed to be doing, right? Like
Yeah.
I remember my first drink, and it was just the same. You know, a couple older guys had some beers, and they wrangled me in, and they thought it would be funny if, you know, young Zac had a couple pops, and immediately I learned that it was medicine. You know, like it worked.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, it's hard to know what is normal use and experimentation and what is something that's connecting with a part of you that is more a compulsion to drink and use, you know, and it's always tough to tell. And even as I continued to drink and got into my 20s, I lived in Boston, college town, right? And there was just people everywhere drinking on a Friday night. But they would go home when the bars closed, and I would go to the after party, and then I'd be at the after party where the sun came up, and then I'd be back in my apartment drinking and using by myself. So it's like, you know, you start to have these little glimpses of where it's different for me.
Yeah. Did your dad ever get treatment, or did he?
He never did. He ended up the bulk of his older adult life homeless on the street in Montana. And we tried to help him with housing. We tried to help him with an inpatient program. And as soon as he would sign in and we'd leave, he'd sign himself out when he was feeling good, and he'd go back out on the street. And, you know, it was heartbreaking to see this man that I deeply loved, but also brought a lot of pain into my life. Never really be able to cope with the pain he carried and find help for himself. Because his father left him when he was 6 months old,
Right.
You know? So it's like that stuff, you know, kind of flows through generations, right? Till one of us is willing to feel it.
Yeah, I think it's, well, yes, generational trauma is real. And I also know that one of the things that's really challenging, what I love about the Phoenix and the way that you guys welcome people into your community, is there is a sense of the people showing up there want to be there, you know, to a certain degree, because they've hit a point in their life where they are looking for community or connection or to be sober. And I always struggle with like trying to help the person that actually doesn't want the help. You know, they'd rather kind of keep the train moving the way it's moving.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, you know, I'm talking about this sort of early childhood stuff, but for me at Phoenix, we almost never talk about that. We're talking about that rock climb, and you climbed that red route and you reached out with your right hand. Is that how you made that move? Can I try it now? Okay, I'll belay you. And, you know, we're encouraging each other to dream of what's possible in our sobriety. And it's forward focused, and it's hopeful, and it's empowering. And the beauty of that is that if I show up at Phoenix, you guys will believe in me, even if I don't yet believe in myself. And that's the power of it.
Well, that's, I mean, the for many years, you think about the movie 28 Days with Sandra Bullock and whatever else it is. I mean, we are taught as a society. I reference it all the time. Well, because it's just like, how terrible is that?
Yeah.
It says everything about treatment and recovery that I don't want people to hear, right? It's like 28 days, you go, you meet some people, you know, they're going to be a little odd, and then you're going to be thrown back into this world, and you're destined to this life of, you know, I don't even remember how the movie ends. Maybe she stays sober and it's great. But my point is, you know, I thought for me and my lived experience was my life was over. Like I was destined to, you know, therapy and meetings and not seeing my friends and not dating and not having any fun just so that I could stay sober. And that's been the complete opposite, you know, of my actual experience.
Yeah, mine too. I mean, getting sober, you know, my friend Ben Court, who helped start Phoenix.
Oh, I know. Okay, Ben.
Yeah, you know Ben.
He's doing a project out in Colorado now with all the Foundry and
yeah. So Ben's great.
Shout out Charlie.
And Ben always said, he's like, I got sober because I didn't want to die, but I stay sober because I get to live.
Yeah.
You know, and I just love that because it just speaks to how I feel about it too.
Incredible.
I think what's really cool about, because we talk about this all the time, you know, in recovery, whether it's through the 12 steps. I mean, really my experience was through the 12 steps. I know Zac's is through the 12 steps. And, you know, those principles, the values, the directions, like they're applicable to any human being, whether they had a problem with substances or not. But I think like what's really cool about New Form, you know, which is the app through the Phoenix and these events, is that it is recovery. You are having to show up. You are having to, you know, act a certain way. But it's dissolved in this event that is active and fun and not a sober event. You know, it's like anyone who wants to do this thing can do this, and you're going to learn about living on life's terms, you know, free of, you know, the self-destructive ways you were living before. And I just think like that's really unique and special and highlights connection, which is sounds like growing up in your childhood, like there was a lot of disconnection.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the early childhood stuff, the way it showed up is it affected the self-worth, which made me feel like I wasn't deserving or worthy of love, you know? And so I went through a lot of life like that. And actually, I would say when I started Phoenix, I thought by trying to rescue some people, maybe I would prove my self-worth, you know? And so I was like in it. I was like, we'd have 100 people doing well at Phoenix and we'd have one guy struggling and I would focus just on him.
Yep.
You know, and I realized my friend, who's also my therapist, said, if you want to save people drowning in a well, you don't jump in the well to save them, you know? And I was like, yeah, good point. You know, he's like, you rest up and you come back the next day so you can get more people out. And that just shifted my mindset and I was no longer jumping in the well. And what I realized is it really wasn't about the finish lines or standing on top of the mountains and all these different sports I was doing. It was about the people you shared it with. It was about the community. It was about people that are there to lift me up on a day when I'm having a tough day. And on that mountain, I can carry more in my pack when they're having a tough day. And that's how the Phoenix works.
So you, despite, you know, some of the childhood struggles, for lack of a better word, make it to college. Where did you go to school? In Boston?
Yeah, I actually made it to working on boats after I went to a school program on a boat.
Okay.
And then when I came ashore, I had actually started to get a glimpse of these unique gifts that I had that I could contribute to others. So on the boat, you know, you were I was on the man overboard squad. If somebody went over the side, we'd get in a small boat and go save them. You know, we were out there in storms, you know, furling sails and sailing across the Atlantic and doing all this incredible stuff. And then I came ashore and tried to go to a regular school. I'm horribly dyslexic, and it was a school for kids with dyslexia. And I just didn't fit in that environment. Like I had already seen what was possible in this world, like bigger things. So I asked my mom, I said, if I get my GED, could I drop out of school and start working on boats? And she was scared that I'd go back to that old life of drinking and drugging all the time. At this point, I was just drinking. I had stopped doing drugs.
When did you stop using drugs?
When I was on the boat, because I started to see this strength in me, and that strength started to show up when somebody would say, hey, man, you want a line of Coke? I'm like, no, I'm good, man. But for some reason, binge drinking until I'd blacked out was still cool, you know.
But
I thought it
something
had
in you
more
just
integrity,
knew,
but
something in you just was like, no more cocaine, no more waking up at, you know, staying up all night and you know, saving lives like manically, like whatever it was.
yeah, I was done with it for some reason. But then my drinking progressed, right, as I got a little older, and I get to the point where I couldn't not use, like be so blacked out drunk that I'd go pick up and use, and then it would turn into a bender. Then I'd be out. And meanwhile, I was already exposed to this sailing world where I was supposed to be inspiring youth and at-risk youth how to live with this integrity. But at night, the wheels would come off, and I'd be out in Boston using, and I just felt so ashamed when I'd show up for those kids. And that's when I took that step into recovery.
What age was that?
24 in Boston. So a little over 28 years ago.
And no treatment?
No treatment. Tried to go to a couple AA meetings at that time, but there were not a lot of young people in those rooms.
Yeah.
And so I just started going in the boxing gym every day. I found a friend who was a Golden Gloves fighter, and she started teaching me about the sport, and I would wait outside with my gym bag, and they'd open the gym, and I'd go in. I train and I hold the mitts and do stuff for other people, you know, there. And then when they close up, I'd go home and I'd wait till it opened the next day. And then I'd go to work in between. And that led me to other sports like weightlifting and triathlon and a whole bunch of stuff.
And were you an athlete growing up?
Not at all. Not at all. When I was in my addiction, I would be the guy like smoking a cigarette, say, who are you running from? Like when they go by the bar, you know? And, but when I was a kid, my dad used to take us hunting and we'd be out in the woods, and being in nature with him was like the one moment where we actually got to bond without all the other stuff. And my stepdad was going to take me on this camping trip. And I just remember how excited I was to like get the tents and the gear, and it got rained out and everything. But I remembered that feeling. So I just thought, I'm going to get outdoorsy and I'm going to get into fitness stuff. And essentially I'm just going to try everything that I'm not doing now to see if I can change my life, because I was so, just over the drinking and drug life that I was living.
Were you meeting other other sober people, or you were building your community kind of despite that?
Just on my own, really.
Right.
Yeah, my brother and I were super tight. He lived in Boston and he was still drinking. And he got sober a couple years before me, and I convinced him he wasn't an alcoholic, and he went back out with me. And so we drank for a bunch more years together. And then I got sober and then told him he was an alcoholic, and it didn't go well. But he finally quit drinking, and we were our own little fellowship, in the beginning. And then in the boxing gym, I met a couple sober guys. And then my first climbing partner didn't drink. And that was the beginning of Phoenix. We just didn't have a logo yet.
I love that, because I remember the first time someone told me they were sober, that was kind of cool.
Right.
And I was like, you're sober? And then it snowballs into this thought that, oh, maybe this isn't just, a bunch of people twice my age sitting in a church basement. Like, there's actually people living real productive lives, doing cool shit that are not drinking, not doing drugs.
Yeah, I love that, because that's part of Phoenix being out there so much. It's like we're at cycling races in our cycling kits, we're wearing Phoenix gear all over the place. We're mobbing up together, laughing and having fun in recovery. And, we're having it out there in the world so people can see it and see that there's hope and joy, and you can do all this stuff and have fun and still remember where you parked your car the night before.
Right. Yeah. What was your emotional life and your relationship to your parents at this time? Like when you were on the boat and when you got right around the time before you got sober? I mean, like, was there a lot of internal work that you had to do? Or, I mean, you seem pretty even keeled, now. Were you always that way?
Yeah, I think it was that time. So I had been in recovery for a while. We had already started Phoenix, and it was serving a fair amount of people in Colorado. I think we were just looking at expanding into California. And I started being one of those people who can sort of get so good at the language of recovery that I can wall off the stuff that really is still there for me. You know the lingo, you know how to talk about it, but have you ever really gone into that deep work to kind of think about why you fell into that lifestyle? And I always think of it as like you hear a noise in the middle of the night and you think somebody might be down in the basement. Like, you've got to go down and check it out, or you're never really going to rest easy. Mm-hmm. And I had never really taken that journey down there to see what was there. So I went to a trauma healing workshop. It was a week-long program that I had referred a whole bunch of people to because I thought it would help them, and it did. But I was terrified to go myself. And I went there and I got to let go of all of this stuff. And it wasn't just letting go of the pain. It was the grace and love I had found from my father and my stepfather and my mother in their own stories, because they too had early childhood stuff and their own experiences. And I just came back from that different. I came back feeling worthy and deserving of love. And that was a big change. And I think for, a guy my size in a gym lifting weights with people talking about that is not something a lot of guys in the gym hear, Do
you think that's learned? I mean, that empathy and the compassion you're able to have for your father, I mean, do you think you learned that, or that's something that's innate? I
actually think it's part of us as humans. I think we have this intrinsic strength and this like love and empathy for other people, probably because we're like pack animals, right? We want to be in our tribe or our pack. And I think sometimes that gets clouded by how we think we should show up and who we think we should be and what we see modeled for us. And so, I think that growing up, I didn't see vulnerability in a lot of men. So my brother and I, going through the stuff we did together, we started to model who we could be as men. So it was a big shift for me, seeing it modeled. And I think through Phoenix, starting to have love and empathy for other people allowed me to find it for myself.
Do you have thoughts on, I mean, what I'm thinking is that you were ahead of your time in terms of the men's mental health movement and the men's kind of vulnerability movement that we're seeing. And we were kind of joking a little bit before about, the social media influencers. And I mean, it's really, it's out there, it's something that a lot of people are talking about, and it's very easy to post something on the internet, but then not do it. I mean, do you have thoughts or around some of that stuff or?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think what we're not modeling for each other are really foundational principles that we all believe in, like treating people with dignity, like believing in the strength in all people. We'll see our 24-hour news feeds and our social media feeds, and we'll doom scroll and all this other stuff, but you still see people holding the door for each other. If somebody drops something from their grocery bag, somebody else picks it up. Like, that is us as humans. Is actually, we want to be in a nurturing, connected space with other humans, but I think it's not always something that's lifted up.
Why do you think that is?
I think the other stuff, the quick hit scroll, something that you see that's really polarizing, is just like a hit. Yeah. It's like that dopamine hit. You see it, you got to scroll, you got to find the next one, just like the next line of Coke. And it's like when you actually show up for somebody and then that person shows up for you, that's the log on the fire that actually warms your soul. And I think when you do it in this principled way, which is why our ethos exists, that's where the magic happens, and I think that what's so special about that, you guys see it in the recovery community all the time, but the rest of the world doesn't see that every day. I think we can share it with them by lifting it up.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was thinking the other day, because I'm guilty of the doom scrolling. I'm guilty of losing focus. I'm guilty of all those things. And there's nothing that focuses me more. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. The Eagles could be in the Super Bowl. If I get that note of someone asking for help, nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. I'm going to focus in on that. And until that person feels like, because there's such a small window. And to this day, with all the noise, that's the one thing that like focuses me in. And I think all humans have that. Like, we want to be helpful.
I totally agree. I think you have unique gifts you can share to help somebody, and you've actually been there too.
Yeah.
So you understand it in a different way. And by helping lift them, you also lift yourself. That's not the why behind it, but it helps you find a life of purpose and a why for being here and a way you can contribute to others. And I think that ultimately is what we're trying to build at the Phoenix.
Who was the person that modeled that for you though? Because I'm just thinking, I'm sitting here like, okay, no treatment, no real therapy. Like, you got but who was the person that do you credit someone with that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was like this incredible combination of things where when I worked on boats, they were sail training boats. So there were these like underpinnings of outward bound type programs, like we're all in the same boat, we got to pull together. And, so there are foundational elements there. But some of the early people in Phoenix were Ben Court, who had worked at summer camps and, helped taking people on outdoor adventures. We had Jackie Helios, who was a clinical social worker. So we all sort of had these different views into this issue and realized that nurturing community can overcome a lot of things.
Everything.
I mean, I go, because this is something that I just have been thinking about, and in recovery, like why some people get it, like why some people, not just I'm not going to drink and use drugs, but like why it moves from selfishness to selflessness, like why people really recognize the value of that. And like, I'm more cynical than you are, because I feel like I do think, the human hearts, human kindness, is in all of us, but it's just so clouded by, the reach and the grab and, what is interesting. People love watching conflict and pain and scandal. And it's just hard for me to reconcile that some people are just born with, better access to that humanity. Because like what you're saying, like, it wasn't really modeled, yeah, you're on a boat and everyone, but like you could say that about like veterans who are in war, like they would literally die for one another, and then they leave and everyone, and we all know that like suicide and mental health issues are rampant in that community. So, there's no answer here. I mean, I think building community is incredibly important, but I just constantly wonder like why, like, you're so committed to helping others, and you're all about like lifting people up, like we just need more voices like that. And I just feel like in this world today, it can feel like we're headed the other way.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with that. I mean, I think that to me is like really why I wanted to write my book, Rise, Recover, Thrive, about the Phoenix and my own story. Was I sit in our office in Boston and I look down on our gym. It's like a 12,000 square foot.
This is HQ.
This is HQ.
Yeah.
Like climbing gym, CrossFit floor, yoga studio, meeting space, coffee bar where we crush some coffee. And is that all free? That's all free.
Wow.
Yep. If you're 48 hours sober, come on in. And I see firefighters that are in the Cadet Academy training down there. We have a partnership. The stigma is shifting for them because the kid who welcomed them in had his life saved by Narcan, by somebody on the street, a first responder, right? And they're seeing that recovery is possible. You have open gym with the guys from the sober living or the, transitional program, coming home from the criminal legal system. And they're all in there together, right? From the nicest neighborhoods in Boston to a shopping cart outside with all their worldly possessions. And we got ankle monitors and we got guys with broken noses and we have people high-fiving and fist bumping and sharing a kettlebell to get their 150 kettlebell swings in. And whatever it is, it's like they're fist bumping, they're lifting each other up. And what I think happens when you create this container of safety with the ethos of like, we leave all the other stuff that divides us outside, and in here we are one Phoenix. I think people actually get to take a breath and relax, and they don't have to have that anxiety. They don't have to worry about how they show up. They just show up as them. And by doing so, allows the other person to do the same thing. And I think telling that story to the world now is crucial, or else we will start to believe it is only what we see by the loudest voices that speak most often. And the truth is most people are sitting around talking about how they're worried about what they see today. Most people sitting around, I believe, would connect with what we're building.
Yeah. Can you go back to the hanging the first shingle? I mean, the origin story or what
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by, you always see Apple, like whoever it was in the garage, like making the first computer. I'm very curious to hear.
Well, I definitely like
the smile does it for me, man.
Yeah, I mean, we faked it till we made it, because like I wrapped my truck in like Phoenix stuff, and I would drive around Boulder and I'd put up on cork boards. That's how long ago it was, right? Like on cork boards, like a flyer with like tearaway information that there's free climbing for sober people on a Friday night at the Boulder Rock Club. And there's a bike ride on Saturday. And I'd show up in my brand new Phoenix cycling kit, with my truck with my bikes on top, because I had like rental bikes in case you didn't have one.
Yeah.
And I remember one day a dude came over and he's like, "Man, Phoenix, what's this? I see it everywhere." And I was like, it was just me, going everywhere, trying to get it going. And one dude showed up and he's like, "Dude, is anybody else going to come?" And I'm like, yeah, man, just give it a little time, And the only reason he showed up is I heard him sharing about like how resentful he was having to ride his bike because he lost his license with a DUI. And I was like, "Oh, you're a cyclist?" He's like, "I wouldn't say that, man," But that's how it started. And then all of a sudden, a handful of people showed up, And when we really started to turn on volunteers is when we hit that hockey stick, because anybody that had something meaningful they wanted to share could start Phoenix. And we had people from all over the country reaching out.
So how long ago was that?
That's really been in the last 5 years.
Okay.
So I'd say the first 10 years, we held it really tight because we didn't want to lose what was special about it. But we didn't know what we had to hold tight and what we could let go of a little bit in the culture. And we always wanted it to be, physically and emotionally safe, supportive, and inclusive. And then we started realizing that we distilled this down to an ethos that almost every Phoenix member can tell you what it stands for. And that allowed us to let other people carry it forward. Because even if we weren't there, they could tell you that Phoenix was supposed to lift you up and not pull you down. And that's the lens they'd make decisions with. Because when we show up at Phoenix the first time, we may not be in a really healthy place, Right. And the ethos isn't about kicking people out. It's a handrail. It's to say hey man, you don't have to fight a guy over a barbell. We have 32 of them, maybe where you came from on the yard, there was just one, but it's different here, grab your own. Yeah. And by the way, that guy's here to lift weights with you. So why don't you guys get after it? And 2 years later, those dudes are lifting weights together, so it's that's kind of how Phoenix works.
Is there this is just my mind asking a random question. Is there, do any of your athletes end up competing like CrossFit game? Do you have any kind of upper echelon folks that come in and really find that they're awesome runners or?
Oh yeah, we do. And it's not the goal of what we're doing, but it definitely happens. We had 2 folks that were really great cyclists before they came to Phoenix, getting sober and then riding together. They both ended up turning pro as mountain bikers.
Wow.
They raced a 24-hour race together as a duo team and podiumed, So it's we're also, what you talked about earlier, we're modeling that recovery can be badass and fun in addition to creating a space for people to come together and support each other.
So, what if you could distill it down, what is the secret or the code, to building community that, lasts and also has these healing properties?
I would say you got to be clear on vision, talk about vision all the time. For me, it's we want to transform the way the country is approaching addiction and mental health. And because I think the way we're doing it now is often a top-down control approach, treating people as a problem to be managed, instead of thinking about everybody having intrinsic strength in them. And if you can just give that strength a little oxygen, it's going to catch fire. So you just got to share that all the time. And the folks that share that vision, you just empower them to help carry it forward. So you got to be clear on the vision, but you also be able to let go on some stuff. So people that are talented, that want to carry this even further than I can go run with it,
What's the biggest hurdle?
I'd say the biggest hurdle is the attention probably of the philanthropic community to try to stimulate innovation. What we see a lot is people fund the foundational programs in their community, which is great because we need that shelter. We need this program that's been around forever. We need those things. But in the private sector, capital stimulates innovation, right? You can go get, your venture capital dollars to start your tech company. But to get venture capital dollars, the equivalent in the in the nonprofit sector, to innovate technology in the addiction and mental health space is harder to do. So I think the philanthropic community needs to think differently. The same way they do in their day job, they can bring that same thinking to their philanthropy and try to stimulate that. I also think us as leaders in the space have to be okay with what we built changing into something better. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we try to keep it so much the way it is that, if I didn't let Phoenix change at all, we would just be riding bikes and lifting weights and doing CrossFit together. Now we have music. Now we have art. Now we have dance. We have all these things. New form. Yeah, we have this technology platform where there's 100 other nonprofits on there, and they're bringing all sorts of different services that we don't even offer. But we're open to innovation and change. So I think that's the mindset we need to bring to this space.
Isn't that like the anti-founder / CEO where you're like willing to, you know, take hands off and I mean, that just seems right, but counterintuitive. Zach, do you want to speak to that?
I'm learning. I'm learning from Scott today. Everything is, timing is hilarious. No, I mean, I can answer the question. I mean, like I'm an open book. Like I with release, I'm always trying to answer that question of like, how do I carry culture, but continue to improve, and some of the processes and policies and procedures and things that are going to make us better don't always feel great, because it feels bureaucratic and it feels like it's going to kind of like prevent us from helping the next person. And so I appreciate that. You know, I also, in terms of what you're talking about with capital and money, I mean, like I heard something the other day that I think, you know, nonprofits, like the GDP or whatever, is like 3% of all the money, you know, and of that 3%, behavioral health care gets 2% of that money. So there's like, it's hard. I mean, like, because folks don't get our work yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that is that tension around, like, I always think of like, so I will say what set my risk profile in business and leadership is the severity of the issue we work around. Like, so if we have a chance to go and it could save lives, we go. If we have to figure out the standard operating procedures and the ops stuff that supports that, and that's lagging behind, we're still going to go, you know? So that risk profile is so important. I think that the thing is, when you really know that somebody's aligned with you, give them the space to start innovating it too, because it can become something so much bigger. An example of that is, we had a guy who was a musician. He stopped playing when he got sober because he thought he couldn't be creative anymore. And then some other musicians inspired him to get back to music. And we had never done music stuff. Well, now we do tons of music stuff. We do sober sections at festivals. We did a whole sober concert in Vermont just a couple weeks ago.
Those
Volunteers, and we get grants and we get funding to kind of.
How are you getting like the logo and the merch? Like, how are you getting that all there? I mean, it's got to be a logistical nightmare.
That's the stuff. Yeah, a lot of that's what we do through the grant funding. So. It's, but the cool thing is, now you have folks that can go drink some killer mocktails at music festivals. They can mob up in a sober section. They can find us on the New Form app, you know, so we're empowering people back to music. That actually would never have happened if we didn't listen to a couple people inside of Phoenix that love music and wanted to bring it to our programming, you know? So it's like, you gotta think of your organization being as smart as all of the people that are involved that are vision and value aligned. The people that aren't vision and value aligned have got to go, because they can take you off course really fast, especially skilled people who aren't vision and value aligned.
Do you, what's the number one, what's your greatest event? Like, what is your favorite day in the history of the Phoenix? Like, what is the greatest event you've seen you guys do, or like proud dad moment?
I think this is actually not a massive thing, but one of my like favorite stories, Phoenix stories, is it's a lot of work to run Phoenix and to grow it and to raise the money for it. And now I'm trying to be a dad and, have a family and all this other stuff. And I was in Colorado. I was there for some fundraising stuff. There was a Phoenix ride, so I went on it. I used to race Ironman. Now I'm like just trying to survive this ride in the back, because I never get to exercise anymore. And I look at the top of this hill. The rest of the ride was like up the road. They had dropped me, and there's a volunteer standing on the side of the road at the top of this hill. And I get up there, he's like, yo, man, you need some water or a gel? And I was like, dude, I would love a gel. And I like, hit some caffeine in this gel. And I was like, thank you so much, man. Just the fact you're waiting for me means so much to me. He's like, yeah, in my volunteer training, I learned that I should carry some extra snacks in case people get hungry, and, that we don't drop anyone. We never drop anyone. And so that dude phoenixed me, and he didn't even know who I was. I'm just a dude who's a little out of shape on a bike ride. And it's like, that's the magic of it, right? Like he's never going to drop me, and I never drop him. And that's what it's about.
Is there this speaks to maybe, the misunderstanding or misinformation about, substance use and recovery, but is there a barrier when you're going to try to raise, funds to making people understand that like this is a life-saving venture here? Because it's not like you're putting people in treatment or, like you're creating events for people to thrive in recovery. So do you have a hard time making people understand, the significance of what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because you do have to find more entrepreneurial philanthropists, right? Because they built their own companies, they think in a creative way, they see that a lot of the institutional structures that exist aren't working that well in addressing this, and that we need innovative, creative sort of ideas and options. And those are the people that are Phoenix funders.
Can you break down just in very simple, the next question we will get is, okay, how do I find the Phoenix? How do I get to an event? How do I assume the way that I'm visualizing it, because I've only kind of seen it here in New York, is that there's chapters or kind of pods all throughout the country, and those are located on the web. Like, can you just break it down? If I'm 48 hours sober, which I am proudly, how do I find you?
Yeah. So we, you just go to thephoenix.org, or you go to newform.org. Essentially, we built a digital app during the pandemic. We started live streaming and had on-demand content, and then when we came back in person, you could geolocate the Phoenix events near you on our app. And we started realizing not everybody needs a run today. Maybe today they need some group work around some trauma stuff. So what nonprofits are doing that? Can we get them onto our app? And then after we got about 30 or so organizations on our app, we rebranded it as New Form. And the idea is a new form of digital community, a place where like every tap and swipe moves you closer to actually putting your phone down and being with people, and a place where you're lifting each other up. And if it's something Phoenix can't help with, maybe you guys could help folks, and we could plug them into you and they could find you on New Form. But you lead your run too, right? Like that could be on the app. Mm-hmm. Same thing for She Recovers, or for Ben's Friends, which does recovery meetups for folks in the food service industry. So we started bringing on groups like Seek Healing, which help people overcoming trauma. And the bulk of these organizations have free activities. So I would just say, download New Form, open it up. And if there's not something near you, you can be the person that starts Phoenix, and we'll help you do it.
Are you confident that most people were able to find something somewhat close to them? Has it gotten to that point?
It's getting there,
yeah.
And a good friend of mine who's also our board chair, Josh, he always screenshots when there's no Phoenix things around him and he's traveling for work. He's like, yo, man, what's happening in Atlanta? We got to get more stuff down here. But the beauty of it is you can grow it that way. When you find a spot where there isn't a lot, you just say, who knows somebody down there? Isn't your buddy a runner and he lives down there too? Would he start Phoenix? And all of a sudden, you just start having a couple events sprinkled in. So some places like Boston or Denver or New York and other places, soon to be Philly. We just got a building down there.
Oh, no shit.
So we're going to open a brick and mortar, but we'll have a ton of events. Other places, it might just be one workout on a Sunday in a little CrossFit gym somewhere where the coach.
So the buildings you have like brick and mortar, Denver, Boston, Philly now, and New York.
Yeah, well, we don't have one in New York, brick and mortar, but we will someday, I hope. Yeah, and then we have a couple small spots like Las Vegas. We have one, and then Wichita, we have one out there. So
why Wichita?
We just had a philanthropist there who really wanted a Phoenix there, and so we got one. Up. And they crush. If you're ever in Wichita, Phoenix, Wichita is awesome, by the way.
And so you sit in Boston and you watch these people kind of come through. Are you getting 50 people a day? Are you getting 10? Is there a couple hundred? Like what are the numbers? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So we we're serving probably to 20 to 30,000 people a week in Phoenix. So, that breaks down. Our brick and mortar sites serve about double what a community does without a brick and mortar, but still impressive numbers, even in places where we don't have a building, like thousands of people annually in those places.
And are you on the whole, I don't know why this is a random thought, and I know Sarah's got something for us, but are you on the whole cold plunge sauna? Well, like, are you in that whole thing? Are you out on that? What's your?
I would love the time to be on that train, but I just don't have it right now. But it's like,
I'm talking about for the Phoenix. Though, would you?
The Phoenix.
Would you incorporate that into or?
Oh yeah, the Phoenix does that for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. We did a cool thing recently where a group of philanthropists came for a Phoenix workout, and then we led them through a cold plunge.
Nice.
And the guy who led it is like a ninja at cold plunging. He's like, "You're okay, man. You're going to get through this." He's like whispering in the person's ear, and they're like, okay. But, it's that's what it is. You come, you do something that's a little scary, you push through it. We went through the greater adversity together of that activity. We're bonded. So when I'm on a tough recovery day, I can call you guys up and you're there for me.
Yeah.
Have you gotten, I'm a little blown away, just in thinking about like what you've built, and you're saying that it's really the benevolence and, social concern of these philanthropists, which allows this to, continue.
Yeah.
Have you ever had like the pressure or have struggled yourself to like, now's the time to monetize. Like now we have to start, making for ourselves.
Oh yeah. All the time. I mean, all the time your people are like, why don't you just charge a few bucks for people to come? And I just think we'd lose something because like, no matter how far you go in your addiction, because it's intrinsic for you, I think we all have this pride. And when you have a scholarship for something, we used to scholarship some of our more expensive trips like Moab, where you actually have to pay for some lodging or travel. And we all go to Moab, Utah. And people wouldn't take the scholarship. They say, I want to wait till next year when I can actually pay for it, because they're rebuilding their life and their recovery, So it's like, I just want to keep it free. And the people who can pay will pay a little something or make a donation. That's great. Or even better, become a volunteer and you give back that way.
Yeah, I was talking to a buddy the other week who's got a platform, some stuff that's kind of growing, and the way he started it was to make it free, and he's debating whether he's going to kind of start charging. And I worry for him because even if it's $5, people that might turn people away. And if you're building community and it started off as free, it's hard. So kudos to you. It's amazing to hear the story, and you're definitely out there. I've seen the logo at marathons. I've seen, it's, and that's for me, like with Release, like I'll be in the airport and randomly see someone with one of our shirts, and it's just like, okay, it's kind of happening. It's kind of happening. And
there's a purity.
Yeah.
Like AA, were you thinking or conscious of 12 steps when you were building this?
Yeah.
Or no?
Of course, cause it's like, you see how, a couple people in recovery or seeking recovery with a big book can start a meeting.
Yep.
Like, can we have the threshold to start Phoenix be that low? I think at some point, as it gets more complex, you have to have certain safety elements kind of built in because we don't all show up in a healthy spot, So we make it, I love this saying, like make it as complicated as it needs to be and no more. So keep it as simple as you can.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that I heard the other day. It's like, just keep doing the boring thing over and over and over again, and
right.
you're gonna get the results. Pass me the book.
Yeah, let's talk about the book.
Yeah. So Rise, Recover. So you wrote this book, How I Got Strong, Got Sober, and Built a Movement of Hope. Have you started to get some feedback? Are people reading it? Tell us about it.
Yeah, they are, and it's
pretty cool, man. It's you.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. It's writing a book's wild because you're like, you're used to talking about this stuff in therapy, and then you're talking about it to a publisher, and they're like, wait, so how old were you when that happened? Or was that the summer of whatever? Mm-hmm. They're more about the details of the timeline than the exchange you have with your dad, you know, but I think what's really special in there is the Phoenix members, you know, the people that a lot of folks had given up on, and now they're the ones holding up a beacon of hope for everybody else. Mm-hmm. Like there's one story in there about Tiffany, and Tiffany was out on Mass and Cass, which is like the open drug market area in Boston. And now she's helped over 5,000 people change their lives, you know, by empowering Phoenix volunteers. So she's a staff member now, leads Phoenix in our New England area and into prisons too.
How far is your Boston location from that open air drug market?
Like a block and a half.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah. So right where we need to be.
Yeah.
And, but like Dina, who's in there too, Dina's out the front door every day calling people in as they go by. You know, they're heading over to score somewhere, and she's like, yo, you should be in here instead. Come check it out. You know, they don't have 48 hours, but she's walking them through and giving them a cold bottle of water and saying, when you're ready, we're here for you. Yeah. And this front door is free, so come on in.
That's awesome. Sarah, what do you got?
I just think, listening to the concept of the program, I just think it's also really great for like new moms and young families to just feel connected, because there's so many.
Sarah, the producer, is chiming in here talking about feeling good, connecting for young moms, right?
Young
Sarah?
moms, yeah, because
young
I
moms.
think, there's a lot of this like mommy wine culture and stuff where like, people get together with their kids and they'll drink. And so I'm curious, have you seen like a lot of like families, like are there family events too, or is it just kind of 18 older? What's the
question is, have you seen a lot of families 18 and years or older, right, Sarah?
Yeah, thanks for
well, I just want to make sure our people hear this, Sarah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we do get asked about like, does Phoenix do youth programming or programming for families? And most of our stuff, almost all of it, is 18 and up. Mm. And the challenge is we would need to build like a separate track. Mm. And, because we would have to have separate spaces. About, 70% of our folks have some form or involvement with the criminal legal system. And, it's just, we would need to build it as a separate track. But that being said, it's like one of my dreams is to find the philanthropist who wants to fuel that, because the infrastructure is there to stand it up overnight. And we could reach so many people that way. And, my wife and I talk about it too, because, we're both in recovery.
Oh, your wife's in recovery too.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
And being sober parents, she wishes there were more spaces where we could go with our kids and connect in that kind of environment. And so it's already got me thinking in the back of my mind of how that shows up at Phoenix. So
yeah, you just need numbers. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, and kudos to you. I'm sure you threw events where nobody showed up. I'm sure I'm sure there's still events where people 1, 2, 3 people show up, and you gotta keep putting one foot in front of the other, because eventually it's gonna catch on.
I know. I do joke with volunteers and staff sometimes. I'm like, careful what you wish for, man, because it may just be you and your climbing harness standing here waiting for somebody to show up, but it's going to get busy. Yeah. Because once people hear about it, they're like, wait, it's totally free.
Right.
And I can just bring whoever I want with me too. And I'm like, as long as they're 48 hours sober. What I love about that too is somebody brings their mom or their dad. All of a sudden, dad's now thinking about his own drinking, because he's like, wait, 48 hours, that's nothing. Then all of a sudden he's like, actually, that is kind of something, And it just raises people awareness, so much so that we have people that volunteer because they're an ally and a supporter that end up stopping drinking themselves, because they realize their relationship, when they hear so many stories from Phoenix members with substances, is maybe not what it should be.
Well, thanks for coming, man. I mean, it's an amazing thing that you've built, and it sounds like you're not stopping anytime soon. So we'll be looking for the Phoenix. Anything we left out, anything you want to plug, anything that we didn't get to that's important to you?
No, I would just say that keep lifting up these stories of hope for people and community. I love your podcast, and I listen to it all the time. And
thank you.
I think that if we keep putting this out in the world, more people will be drawn to this than instead of doom scrolling, we'll start hope scrolling.
Yeah. I love that, hope scrolling. Maybe that's how I need to reframe it.
Hope scrolling. And you can find new forms.
There is hope, though. Like, the truth is, there is hope on social media. Like, there is good on social media. That's the other thing. We get so far down this hole of, like, everything sucks. And it doesn't all suck. Like, I've had great thoughts and ideas and revelations from the cheesy quote I read from someone at 10 p.m. on a Thursday night. Like,
and the more cheesy quotes you read, the more you're going to get. So it just keeps, like, going up from there, you know? So
the algorithm.
Yeah.
But where can you find the New Form app?
Yeah, just jump in the App Store or Google Play Store and you can find it, or just go to newform.org or go to thephoenix.org and just come out to something. And if you have a unique gift you want to share, if you want to do a book club or art night or whatever, you can become a volunteer and start Phoenix in your community or help it grow if it's already there.
Awesome,
Amazing.
Man. Yeah, I would just say what I heard today is that it's an inclusive community that you can show up to and feel a part of. And for the people listening, you know, I know oftentimes folks listen for people they love. I mean, it's like someone slid a pamphlet, you know, to me at one point in my life about AA, which was helpful. I would have much rather that been a Phoenix pamphlet. I think I would have been a little bit more willing. You know, there's a lot of good here. And Scott, I just appreciate your time and everything that you do, man.
Well, thank you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.